Dear friends, hello and welcome. Today in Ukraine, I have the chance and honor to be accompanied by the teams from Wild Hornet. Wild Hornet is one of the most well-known drone companies, especially because besides being very good in the field, they also have great communication. They don't just make FPVs, they also develop the Queen Hornet, one of the largest small low-cost drones with many capabilities. I've already made a video about it. But especially the Sting, which is a Shahed interceptor drone that has now destroyed hundreds of Shaheds. So we're going to take a look at all the different options they're offering today, and then attend a demonstration. So Wild Hornet basically is a group of enthusiasts, passionate people, but above all volunteers who go out into the field, who help in deoccupied areas, who assist the army, like hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians who are making huge efforts to help the army. And also in this humanitarian effort, once the areas were liberated, Irpin, Bucha, and so on, there were really huge needs. And they also realized the need for demining, the need for reconnaissance, which they themselves couldn't provide, because there are difficulties with the roads and everything else. They had other things to do since the battle was still going on. So they started by developing drones for their own internal needs, and then by tinkering, they began to produce drones. That's why in the summer of 2023, they had simply given about 15 drones to some comrades, because once again, it's a very horizontal war. They started by just giving about 15 drones to their friends, FPV kamikaze drones, and from the very first 10 or 15 drones they provided, FPV kamikaze drones. We're talking about 7-inch ones, we're talking about the smallest ones. They managed to destroy a tank with about 10 drones that cost barely 400 euros each. Obviously, it's a revelation. They continue doing humanitarian work, but they're going to create this company, Wild Hornet, and they're going to start ramping up, gaining momentum, doing research and development. Always with this vision. The anti-tank missile is dead. When I mention it in France, people don't understand. But here, when speaking with French fighters experienced in the French army, not industrialists, they do. Spending 200,000 euros on an anti-tank missile that has less range, carries less payload, and costs almost 500 times more than a drone, obviously. That's something they don't do anymore. And so, the missile producers. Here, the Stugna P, which was very successful at the beginning of the war, and helped stop a lot of tank attacks. Production today is almost stopped, except for exports, since they have won a lot of contracts and all the money is being redirected towards the production of these drones, especially the Wild Hornet FPVs. Today, I want to say that they only produce 2,000 FPV kamikaze drones per month. Why? Because in reality, they didn't achieve the industrial ramp-up they could have, given the lead they had in the summer of 2023. They preferred to focus on two types of drones that are more difficult to build, with specific features. In particular, they have the Queen Hornet, which is the largest of the FPV drones, without going into octocopters. 6 rotors, 8 rotors, which fall into the Baba Yaga category, but the Queen Hornet is simple. It's about being able to carry and deliver 10 kilos over 10 kilometers with a drone that is ultra low cost, since we're talking about only 1,200 euros, and this is not single use. These are drones that will handle logistics, that will deliver ammunition. I invite you to check out the videos we've made that were dedicated to the Queen Hornet, which is really highly appreciated in the field, and which are also produced in large quantities. And then there were these increasingly large waves of Shaheds, and there were difficulties in being able to intercept them. And then they developed one of the interceptors that is increasingly successful today, called the Sting. And hold on, with the Sting, they have already proven more than 1,300 Shaheds shot down. Knowing that they don't receive all the information, and it's the teams they are directly in contact with who give them this information. So now we're going to see how it works, and then we'll do a little demo. Here is the Sting. Well, the color, it's the disco version. Normally it doesn't look like this, but here we're at the school, so this is how they learn. And by the way, this one is reusable, because usually it's single use, so it's better to have it in the orange version. But anyway, it's a drone that will cruise at 280 km/h to chase Shaheds that go at 220 km/h. You can see that gives it a bit of an advantage. And when it's accelerating downward, it can go up to 340 to 360 km/h, so that's still pretty fast. It's used outside of clouds because simply when you're below the clouds, usually the ground teams can shoot at it with cannons with an effectiveness that we know, but it's still low. Basically, a team will shoot down about one Shahed per month, which is already not bad, whereas the teams that launch the Stings will be able to intercept more of them. Hold on, up to about 20 in one night. That's a record. But apparently it's within the norm because it's really super effective. So when the Shahed is above the clouds, it's easy to spot, or when there aren't any clouds in general, they with the radars can see them coming. I've already shown you this app several times. Virage. They know that the Shahed is on its way, and here the radius of engagement, that is the distance at which they can destroy Shaheds, is up to 26 kilometers away. In operational validation and in testing, they know they can go beyond 35 kilometers. So the drone takes off, it goes above the clouds, it gets into position, and on the other side, here you can't see it, but there's an infrared camera that can be set in different positions. It'll fly upside down like this. I'm not showing you again. This camera lets you see in front or downward, and clearly in the images you can see that the Shaheds are bright, meaning they stand out in the sky. So they have a position, a distance azimuth that is very clear. On the radar, the Stings appear, meaning the Air Force can see. From the pilot's feedback, he knows exactly where he is and where the Shahed he's chasing is located. This allows for extremely effective guidance, and then the final guidance. For now, it's 100% manual, which might seem surprising. There's no artificial intelligence in this one yet. It's currently being developed, it's being validated, but without artificial intelligence, good pilots will have an interception rate of 90%. That means if you fire a Sting, you're almost certain to be able to intercept a Shahed. And hold on, we're talking less than 3,000 euros for this type of equipment, 1% of the price of an air defense missile that we would use, just a fraction of the cost of an hour of flight for a fighter jet or a helicopter that would be able to do exactly the same type of mission. So this is really effective, not expensive, and even the engines are Ukrainian. Inside here, there's actually a frame made of carbon fiber, but everything else is 3D printed. Here you have 4 motors for propulsion. It's a device that takes off vertically, goes relatively far, and carries between 500 and 600 grams of military payload, meaning explosives. The goal eventually is to be able to collide with the target. If we can't collide, we're 1 or 2 meters away. It explodes and destroys the Shahed 100% of the time. So we're targeting a large Shahed that now costs between 80,000 and 200,000 euros depending on the version. So here again, even compared to the old Russian war, for 2,000 euros we're destroying things that are 40 or 100 times more expensive. With the Russians, you have to be aware of this. In a war of attrition, the Russians are losing it too. Wild Hornet has stopped focusing on FPV kamikaze drones. They still make a few, but this is really the future for them, and this is essential. And they also know how much we need it. Us, because we can clearly see that we have absolutely no solution to be able to deal with Russian drones, like the Gerbera, which also costs less than 10,000 euros and which has entered Polish airspace by the dozens. All right, let's take off now. That was good, wasn't it? It was friendly. All right, Koyu. So, do you want an awesome story? In winter, when it's really cold, at high altitude, we're in sub-zero temperatures, and when we go through clouds, it can freeze. What do they do about that? They put fat salo, the famous salo, the super popular Ukrainian fat. Well, they coat the propellers with salo, and that makes sure it doesn't really freeze. Ouch, you see above me that antenna. Actually, what's nice is that it also moves. You see, it's turning right now because this antenna has directional capability. They created a triangulation system using electronic warfare to locate the drone in real time. And the camera, well, the antenna, will still orient itself to maintain communication with a video feed that will be the best possible quality for the pilot. That's why we can receive the signal. With this simple antenna that's, let's say, 4 meters high, you can receive the signal like this from almost 30 kilometers away. That's why Traduce's fight today is 26. But they launch the drone when it's arriving and they catch up to it from behind simply by going a little faster than it. They didn't want to tell me the production quantity they had for the Sting. They said they produce more of them than the kamikaze FPV drones. FPV production is 2,000 per month, so it's likely they make even more monthly, increasing their field numbers. Plus, they're not the only producer. So, in terms of the race, once again, when it comes to volume, low cost, and efficiency, it works really well and it's really good. But with the arrival of AI, their interception rate will increase even more to assist the pilot, especially when they're out of detection range and don't have video feedback. There, they'll be able to keep intercepting them at longer distances, and for now, that's what's limiting them. They need piloting teams with dozens of drones every 20 kilometers. And then eventually, when AI is integrated, they could, for example, put one every 50 or even every 100 kilometers, with about 100 drones that can take off and intercept them. So the arrival of AI will allow teams to be spaced farther apart, meaning fewer launch points, but also more efficiency. That's really interesting. And there's always the challenge of detecting the arrival of the Shahed. And for that, Ukraine is also very advanced, because they have radars, of course, like everyone else. They have acoustic sensors, and acoustics are really a system that's inexpensive and effective. And like that, they have several tens of thousands of sensors across the entire territory to detect incoming cruise missiles and kamikaze drones. And from the sound, they know how to recognize what type of missile is coming, identify it, and determine which one is the priority target. And there is work being done to intercept, get this, glide bombs. And they didn't tell me if it was them, but I think it's probably another interception company. They managed to intercept a Russian glide bomb because in that case, too, it flies relatively flat, following a very predictable trajectory. And so when they see the glide bomb coming, they launch a Sting or an equivalent interceptor to meet it and destroy the glide bomb. And that's coming to the field very soon, and that too will save a lot of buddies. I hope you enjoyed this video. In any case, here innovation continues at a fast pace. They keep training and getting stronger. We should be inspired by them. See you soon.